This is Jim Fetzer, your host, right here on Authentic News, RBN Live, this 14th day of April 2025. I just swallowed wrong. My apologies. Just taking a glass of water. Julie and I were just talking, and I sounded great. Here we go. Harvard rejects Trump administration demand with federal funding at risk. This is important. Here we have from the Washington Post. With billions in federal funding at risk, Harvard officials Monday rejected Trump admin demands to make sweeping changes to its government admissions and hiring practices. Good. Harvard will continue to work to combat anti-Semitism, and Harvard remains open to dialogue about what the university has done and is planning to do to improve the experience of every member of its community. Two attorneys representing the school wrote in a letter Monday, but the school is not prepared to agree to demands that go beyond the lawful authority of this or any administration. Excellent. The school is the first to push back against the government's effort to force changes at elite universities. And it has the most funding potentially at stake. The admin announced it was reviewing $9 billion in contracts it grants at Harvard and its affiliates. Now, what appears to be going on, my interpretation, Harvard's willing to embrace the classic definition of anti-Semitism, but not the expanded, which of course means any criticism of Israel on any basis whatsoever, even in opposition to genocide, is classified as anti-Semitism. I've been very, very worried that elite universities like Harvard were going to succumb. Meanwhile, we have Norman Finkelstein,
do you want to know where to invest
completely astute student of Jewish influence, where he himself is Jewish. We got
Ms. Maher, who is Uri Berliner?
Mr. Berliner is a former senior editor.
That's all.
Wrong. Senior business editor.
I got the wrong link, sorry to say. Norman Finkelstein is just great. I'll see if I can pull him up because he's saying that Jewish donors are the most responsible for attacks on academic freedom. And I dare say he's got it right. So let's find Norm and give him a chance. Here, well, I'm mistaken. It is on the Jimmy Dore show, remarkably.
San Jose. We'll see in Buffalo, Toledo, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets. We have a special guest with us, Norman Finkelstein, political scientist, activist, whose primary fields of research are the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the politics of the Holocaust. He received his PhD in political science from Princeton. He has held faculty positions at Brooklyn College, Rutgers University, Hunter College, New York University, and DePaul University from my hometown, where he was an assistant professor from 2001 to 2007. His books include The Holocaust Industry, Reflections on the Exploitation of Jewish Suffering, Gaza, An Inquest into Its Martyrdom, and most recently, I'll Burn That Bridge When I Get to It, Politically Incorrect Thoughts on Cancel Culture and Academic Freedom. Please welcome back to the show, Professor Norman Finkelstein. Thanks for coming back. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So I don't know if you're aware of what's happening on social media with Dave Smith and Douglas Murray, but I wanted to run one thing past you because Douglas Murray implied talking about anyone with a Jewish surname who is in a position of power inside the war machine is anti-Semitic. And let me just play a little bit and we'll get your reaction to it.
have this thing of when certain ideas catch hold and what's really going on in them. Now, to attribute American foreign policy in the last 40 years to Paul Wolfowitz and Dick Pearl is knowingly or otherwise to encourage a conspiracy that has very obvious legs. And I just urge you not to do it.
Okay, let me respond to this a little bit. First of all, it is not at all saying that these guys therefore just control everything. I'm just pointing out what a four-star general claimed, where plans originated and that they ended up being implemented. That doesn't mean that they were the absolute ruler or arbiter of what was going to happen. But again, I got to say, for you to say that I can't bring up the neoconservative...
I never said you couldn't.
Okay, let me just... Right, but the implication is that I'm unwittingly giving fertile ground to some like Jew-hating conspiracy if I bring up a guy who's got a Jewish last name who was a consequential person in our government. This is like identical to the arguments of the woke left. That would just be like, oh, if you even say something, if you bring up the crime rate in Chicago, you're basically a bigot because other people could take this and run with it.
Come on.
No, you come on. What's the argument?
If you said to me...
I said a four-star general said something, and there's no... What's the response?
If you said to me, or somebody said to me, don't you think that some people are running the global financial system? And I said, possibly. And I said, who do you think it is? And they said, the Rothschilds. I think I'd be right in saying there was something a bit off about the character of the person doing that, because it seemed like they were playing to some kind of lazy old trope. And I think similarly that if you give the implication that a cabal of people, particularly, and you should be really careful about this because of the people who will come up underneath you, if you give the implication that these cabals exist and you decide to elevate the Jews or people with Jewish names in it and then play down the non-Jews, I can tell you, you will be opening up a world of madness.
But am I really playing down the non-Jews? I mean, go look at the stuff that I've said about Obama, about George W. Bush.
You said Middle East policy is Dick Pearl and Paul Wolfowitz. And I said,
no. I mean, this is why I'm saying this is a woke leftist tactic. I literally just mentioned that a four-star general said this. I'm quoting him. And now you're telling me that this is the same thing as
to me that when you quote somebody, it's a totally arbitrary thing that you just pluck out of the air. I'm not arguing that it's arbitrary. I'm saying I'm using the quote for a reason. I was connecting it to an argument. And I'm saying to you...
I'm getting fertile ground to Jew haters to mention that.
I think that when you decide to elevate what is a conspiracy of people who are overthrowing the governments of various countries, some of which haven't been overthrown and others of which have, by the way, were not overthrown by American dominance, certainly not in Syria. And then you say that the people who are doing it are these people with Jewish names. I think you should be more judicious than that, because you probably know what bubbles up underneath you online by now.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's no question that there are, no matter what, and by the way, it's funny just hearing you say this to me. I mean, look, and by the way, I completely agree with you. I think you've been one of the best champions on opposing Europe's insane immigration policy. I also think the United States of America's had an insane immigration policy. I'm happy to see that that seems to be being reversed. But imagine you made a point about immigration, and I were to say to you, be careful what's bubbling up online, because now look, the fact is, if you are taking a position that opposes, say, Muslim immigration into the UK, then yes, it is quite possible that a lot of people who really just hate Muslims are going to end up liking what you had to say or following you, but that doesn't mean you're responsible to it. And if I were to say that, you would be the first to very eloquently point out that is a complete non-argument. The question is this policy good or is it bad?
So let me bring in Professor Finkelstein just to see if you would like to comment on that kind of tactic, saying that if you mention someone with a Jewish surname who happens to be a big part of the war machine, that's somehow enabling, and it's bubbling up and enabling anti-Semitism and anti-Semites and Jew haters. What have you seen this a lot?
Well, obviously it's come up a lot. It reached you might say its peak with the publication of the book by John Mearsheimer and his colleague, whose name just slips my mind, where the U.S. foreign policy in Israel, some innocuous title like
the
that,
Israeli lobby,
in which they were determined to demonstrate that Israel had, via its surrogates in the U.S. government, the Israel lobby, that they played a very large role in shaping U.S. foreign policy, and not least in the Iraq debacle under the Bush administration. First of all, as a general rule, these are fair game. It's fair game. It doesn't make it right or wrong, but certainly you can make the claim, you can allege that the Israel lobby, of which a large domestic component is American Jews and organizations and places of power and so forth, that the Israel lobby is playing a large role in shaping U.S. policy. It's certainly a permissible position. It doesn't make it right. I count John Mearsheimer as a friend of mine, and even I would say a good friend of mine. I didn't agree with him. I wrote a very large chapter of a book on his book on the Israel lobby. I didn't agree. We remain friends. We still go out for dinner when he comes to New York. It's a legitimate position. I happen not to agree with it. On the other hand, there are occasions where a stereotype, sometimes they call it nowadays a trope, about a particular people, it can happen that a particular person or persons are acting out that trope.
It's hard to put.
Well, let me just say, I think there's a bit more going on here. The very idea that, Jewish donors are dictating assaults on academic freedom, I am certain that is the case. I don't have any doubt about it whatsoever. And we'll see about Harvard's stance in more nuanced fashion, but I'm very glad, even tremendously relieved, that an institution of its august stature is standing up for American institutions of higher learning. Meanwhile, Paul Craig Roberts talks about Putin's pursuit of a new Yalta. Kiev breaks energy ceasefire 5 times in 24 hours. These violations are on top of previous. So why is Russia complying with a non-existent ceasefire? If Kiev will not comply with a partial ceasefire, why would Kiev comply with a full ceasefire? How can Trump expect Putin to agree to a full ceasefire when Ukraine, Washington, NATO will not comply with a partial ceasefire? Why is Trump destroying Putin's confidence in the negotiation with threats of more punishments for Russia? Sometimes Trump sounds like Hitler, who, trying to keep German war morale alive, boasted of super weapons. Trump is claiming American super weapons, unlike anything the world has known. Is there then a neoconservative mole in the Trump admin encouraging Trump's use of threats to prevent peace agreement? Moreover, who is not complying, Kiev or U.S. NATO? According to the CIA confession published in the New York Times, it's Washington's war with Russia, not Kiev's. Washington calls the shots, not Zelensky. In my opinion, Putin is complying with a broken agreement because he's trying to use a conflict to arrive at a great power understanding like Yalta, an unrealistic hope that prevents a Russian victory. In other words, Putin still thinks there's character in the West when there is no character left. We are completely corrupt. Meanwhile, Zelensky, Hal Turner reports, we speak as equals or we don't speak at all. Zelensky recently recounted with glee how he rebuffed Secretary Scott Bessent's attempt to get rare earth minerals deal signed ahead of Zelensky trip to the White House. He told me, we need to sign this now. Zelensky said, I told him, stop tapping your finger and let's have a serious discussion. I think you expected a different kind of meeting. But I don't see Ukraine as some second-tier nation. We speak as equals or we don't speak at all, Hal Turner opines. Well, he can pay his own bills then. If he wants to be an equal, he can't be a dependent. Or what he is, a teenager in our basement. This is an excellent lesson in parenting. The U.S. with Trump in charge is a dad that's firm and says no often. Trump has said no to Zelensky, a petulant, greedy child. The European Union is the weak mother, and despite dad's strict rules, gives a petulant child everything, undermining dad's authority. Well, a bit simplistic, but roughly headed. Meanwhile, Zelensky bought a large platinum mine in South Africa for $2 billion. Where do you think he got that money? Where do you think he got the money to buy a platinum mine in South Africa? I mean, this is just ridiculous. Here's commentators. Well, actually, it's a video.
On April 8, 2025, an authoritative expert and political scientist, Vladimir Skachko, made a rather shocking statement about the head of the Kiev regime, Volodymyr Zelensky. In particular, speaking to reporters, he bluntly stated that starting in 2019, Volodymyr Zelensky, using his influence and presidential position, created many financial schemes that allowed him to engage in theft and corruption on a large scale. At the same time, this political scientist observed that, since February 2022, Zelensky's income, derived from his corruption schemes, has risen significantly. As it turned out, in the past 3 years, Zelensky has transferred about $30 billion to his offshore accounts. According to Vladimir Skachko, the head of the Kiev regime not only was stealing huge amounts of money transferred by the West to Kiev, but he was also illegally selling Western weapons to third countries. For example, in December 2023, Western small arms transferred to Ukraine, including grenades and American M4 assault rifles, were discovered in almost all hotspots of the world, including the Middle East. Even the Hamas militants used Western weapons against the Israeli army. The same weapons that were transferred to Ukraine in the second half of 2022.
And now he's bought a platinum mine in South Africa for $2 billion. That's your money and mine. Meanwhile, here we have restoring American industrial might to counter China, which is easier said than done. Zero hedge. U.S. Intel predicts a Chinese invasion of Taiwan in 2027, just 2 short years away. The fall of Taiwan would ensure China corners the world's market for semiconductor chips, used in everything from cars to smartphones to satellites. A victory here for the Chinese Communist Party would also no doubt embolden the authoritarian regime's expansionist ambitions elsewhere. Is this a new domino theory? The CCP has made it abundantly clear its goal is to challenge U.S. global dominance and undermine the West politically, economically, and militarily. Well, they can probably do that pretty effortlessly. They clearly have superior military, superior resources to ours. I think that it's probably a foregone conclusion that we would have a great deal of difficulty dealing with China in a war across the Pacific. Think of the logistics, the supply lines. They're so vast. The problems are simply stunning. Meanwhile, we have China selling almost $50 billion in U.S. treasuries. The article says we shouldn't be panicking just yet. I'm not quite so sure. That's from Quartz. I mean, they're dumping the dollar. Russia's jumping the dollar. We brought all this on ourselves. China calls on U.S. to completely cancel reciprocal tariffs. They are not happy with what Trump has been doing. We'll be right back.
Get More Tank will save you.
Nothing you can do that can't be done. Nothing you can sing that can't be sung. Nothing you can say, but you can learn how to play the game. It's easy.
Well, there are a lot of those who think the U.S. is losing its place in the world economically. I am among them. It's very, very troubling what's taking place. Meanwhile, America, here's the story. America and the U.S. dollar is dead. It's really over. On YouTube, let's pick it up. Let's pick it up here.
You know what? What's the problem? We got a serious problem here, and I am doing my best to try to raise people's awareness about this. And honestly, people don't understand what they're seeing or why they're seeing. I'm talking about the U.S. dollar here. The U.S. dollar is literally dying, and without some direct action, it's just over. And this means your way of life, if you are a citizen here in the United States, is going to change, and it's going to change rapidly. So anyway, look, guys, this is my pre-market report Friday, April 11th, 2025. Let's start off with some of the stuff that happened just yesterday. This is a headline from CNBC. U.S. dollar index suffers biggest drop since 2022. It's a new low for the year. There's nothing being put in the way right now to throw the dollar any kind of a lifeline. And the world is watching. Not only is the world watching, but they're taking action right now. And really, the nonsense that we're hearing, more calls again from our illustrious Duppy president. Yeah, I'm back to calling him a Duppy again. He keeps screaming from rooftops that we need a weaker dollar, that we need a weaker dollar. Is the man insane? I really have to ask that, because a weaker dollar doesn't help you at all. It decimates you. It erases purchasing power. Sure as heck helps the multinational corporations, though. They get to trade overseas and they take advantage of the exchange rate, and the fat cats get even fatter. But, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean,
I'm worried that he might just have it exactly right. Get this. Liberal candidate Prime Minister Mark Carney, and I think Layla has been warning us about this, running on banning free speech if elected Canadian Prime Minister. Wow! I mean, you'd think this is insane. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney promised to crack down on free speech in his latest campaign stop in Hamilton, Canada. He's actually running on banning speech in his country in the final weeks of the election. The 2025 Canadian federal election is scheduled for April 28. Here, he's taken over where Marxist Justin Trudeau left off. Here's Carney, quote, "There are many serious issues we're dealing with. One of them is the sea of misogyny, anti-Semitism, hatred, and conspiracy theories. This is a pollution online that washes over our virtual border from the United States. The more serious thing is when it affects how people behave in our society. When Canadians are threatened going to their community centers or their places of worship or their schools, or God forbid, when it affects our children, my government, if elected, will be taking action." So what are they going to ban? Discussion of misogyny, negative attitude toward women, anti-Semitism, negative attitude toward Jews, presumably hatred. That's anything you don't want to hear, right? It's hate speech. It's a phony category. Has no validity whatsoever. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has been declared to be fully fit to serve as commander-in-chief, according to his doctor, after a physical exam. Donald Trump's doc says the oldest man-elected president fully fit to serve as commander-in-chief, as the White House released results Sunday of Trump's recent physical exam. The 78-year-old Trump is 20 pounds lighter since his checkup as president 2020 showed him bordering on obesity. Well, those claims of obesity, I think, are largely manufactured. It's troubling. His physician, Navy Captain Sean Barbabella, cited an active lifestyle that continues to contribute significantly to the Republican president's well-being. Trump turned 79 on June 14th. Meanwhile, this is bad, very bad. Trump names Israeli-born Yehuda Kaplan as U.S. anti-Semitic czar. He doesn't even believe there is a Palestine. President Trump Thursday announced nominating Israeli-born Chabad Lubavitch, rabbi. I should have thrown in a new article I'm going to be discussing tomorrow that both Trump and Putin are.
Help. I need somebody help, not just anybody help. You know I need someone help. When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now these days are gone, I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind, I'll open up the doors.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Look at all the lovely people. Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. Lives in a dream, waits at the window, wearing the face that she keeps in a jar by the door. Who is it for? All the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people. Where do they...
Let me say, this guy, who's a Miami-based businessman, longtime confidant of Trump, served as his Jewish outreach chief on Trump's vision for U.S.-Israel relations after the 2024 election victory, the Jerusalem Post reports. He was born to a Chabad Lubavitch family in Kfar Chabad, near Israel's Ben Gurion Airport. Get this. Trump just appointed Yehuda Kaplan, an Israeli, who says that there never was a Palestine, as lead censor of free speech in America, a.k.a. the State Department's special envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism.
I think that when people are chanting death to Israel, they forget that they realize the second part of that chant is death to America. And from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free. They don't even begin to know the history. There never was a Palestine.
Speaking of not knowing history,
Okay, it goes on. Now, here's one that's going to blow your mind. Turns out that Trump and Putin are both also Lubavitchers. Now, I've got a friend who's been saying this to me for some time, and I've had so much trouble wrapping my mind around it. I was so taken aback by this. I spent like the first half of my show on Revolution Radio this morning with 5 others talking about it. I'm troubled, very troubled. Founded in Lithuania in 1775, the Chabad Lubavitch movement today has adherents numbering in the 5, perhaps 6 figures. What the movement lacks in numbers, however, it makes up for in enthusiasm. Known for practicing a particularly joyous form of Judaism, I'm not so sure about that. The conclusion we came to after discussing this for 45 minutes with some pretty good folks like Russ Winter, was that Jewish superiority, the superiority of the Jews, is a central doctrine of the Lubavitchers. So here you got both Putin and Trump in the same category as this guy has been appointed as our free speech guy. This is just awful, in my opinion. And frankly, it deepens my concerns about Donald Trump and whether he's really going to be what we were promised to be during his campaign. I am troubled. Meanwhile, Mike Flynn joins a chorus of Trump allies asking answers from Pam Bondi and Kash Patel. When are we going to see some arrests? This is coming from the Gateway Pundit. Really excellent, excellent. Meanwhile, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, Trump's former national security advisor and central figure in the Obama-era crossfire hurricane scandal, is once again turning up the heat on key players in the conservative movement, demanding answers from Trump allies Pam Bondi and Kash Patel about long-promised justice. In a post on X Thursday, Flynn shared a clip from his must-watch documentary movie, Flynn, Deliver the Truth, Whatever the Cost, calling on the American public to watch the film and understand the depth of corruption he endured at the hands of the rigged system. Newly declassified Crossfire Hurricane documents reveal the corruption General Flynn faced. Now is the time to watch. I still regard Flynn as a good guy. He's controversial, but then so is yours truly. Meanwhile, fraud flood. 3 Democrat-run states racked up 75% of unemployment fraud. Can you guess which states those would be? Well, surprise. Massachusetts joined California and New York. We all would have assumed. A federal watchdog has uncovered nearly $400 million in fraudulent unemployment benefit payments in 2022, the vast majority in those 3 Democrat states, California, New York. My third guess was, prior to reading this story, Illinois. But no, it turns out to be Massachusetts. Meanwhile, here's a Dodge bombshell. Illegal aliens on the terror watch list got benefits, voted. I mean, it's really ridiculous, all the efforts that's gone into this. Dodge is doing a great job. Nothing they turn up is surprising me. Nothing. Meanwhile, other stories include Hal Turner. Trump invokes Roosevelt Reservation, putting the southern border under military control. Trump orders military to take control of public land along U.S.-Mexico border. I think this is a good move because we do desperately need to control the border. Here's part of a story about it. President Donald Trump ordered the U.S. Armed Forces to repel the invasion, seal the southern border from unlawful entry. The president said the purpose of the mission was to maintain the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and security of the United States. So that's good, I think. Meanwhile, get this. Governor Cuomo of New York, handling of the COVID crisis wasn't just a health catastrophe, but a financial one too, according to a damning new audit released Friday. The state government poured $453 million into building an enormous stockpile of medical equipment and devices and used a tiny fraction. Get this. New York bought a staggering 343 medical devices, but wound up using exactly 3. Wow. Meanwhile, VDARE is being under attack. Charged with nothing, VDARE is forced to spend $1 million on lawyers. We're out of money. New York Attorney General Letitia James may seize our writers, our donors' names, our domain. This is bad. VDARE is very responsible. Here we go.
It's what our writers do when they post pseudonymously. It's what our donors do when they give their money despite the risks. And it's what I do every morning when I come into the office and face subpoena. Instead of building the American institution that I love, the heat we feel now is a fire that they hope will consume us. Stand with us, not in the ashes, but at the forge. see what strength we can temper.
I'm all for that. Meanwhile, we have a breaking. Judge rules in favor of journalists who exposed Minneapolis police lying under oath in Derek Chauvin case. That whole thing was fraudulent, mind you. They used a Sigma 7 African-American pathway training torso on the ground. He was kneeling on the ground. Some may have noticed that when Derek Chauvin was put into the vehicle, he had his hands manacled behind his head, and he had hair. When he's lying on the ground, all of a sudden his hands are in front of his body, and he has no hair. And when they lift him up to put him in on a stretcher and into an ambulance, he has no legs. You can watch more about it. See, Deception Galore, Faking Hate Crimes and More from my 2020 False Flag and Conspiracy Conference. Meanwhile, here we have fake conspiracy theories being used concerning the used by mainstream media. Declassification of records concerning the assassination of JFK, RFK, and MLK have been ordered by President Trump. However, the deadline for their release has passed. There's still no 2025 issue of assassination docs regarding MLK or any new about the killing of Bobby. And of course, you know, what's going on here? We got to ask. It's unfortunate here that 2025 has seen a new phenomenon emerge. Fake news we've had from the mainstream for a long time, but now they're propagating fake assassination conspiracy theories. Well, there are some. I think the attempt on Trump in Butler was a staged event. I've explained it before. Meanwhile, I have on the Raw Deal absolutely correct discussion about the Sandy Hook cases. Kevin Barrett and I did a False Flag Weekly News together this past Saturday. Kevin and I actually originated False Flag Weekly News about 20 years ago. And every intermittent now and then he's brought me back. There's some valuable parts to it, discussing, you know, Sandy Hook and what's been going on there, and where I've been subjected to this digital harassment and cyberbullying with hundreds of attacks by a fellow by Victor Hugo Vaca, claiming that an attorney, Arwin Young, has established that I threw my Sandy Hook case. Just so that you understand how absurd it is, I'm still in court on my Sandy Hook case. How can I have thrown a case I'm still fighting? I have 4 appeals before the Wisconsin Court of Appeals. I took it all the way to the Supreme Court. And when friends of mine have sent this Arwin Young, you know, copies of some of my motions, my motion to open pursuant to extrinsic fraud and fraud upon the court, or my motion to recuse Judge Frank Remington, it's had no impact. I mean, in other words, he has been sent filed court briefs that he's ignoring so he can continue to insist I've tossed a case that I'm still fighting in court. I mean, this is just as absurd. And this Victor Hugo Vaca puts out video after video after video. It looks as though since December 17th, when he had a falling out with Brian Davidson on a show over his repeated use of the phrase, "It's the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews," where he may be a leading anti-Semite, though, of course, he means it to be exposing the improper corruption upon our government, with which I, of course, agree. Brian took exception. Say felt the situation is more complex and nuanced than that, talking about the Pilgrim Society, the Vatican, even the, Jews against genocide, and excused himself from the conversation when Victor began attacking him in videos as a coward. I had had enough of Victor, and I took him off my shows, and I said to him, if you'll stop attacking Brian, we may reconcile. But he said, no, he's got to insist. And now he has 444 videos attacking me and Brian and my other colleagues, others who have sought to reach out to him and explain what's going on, have received similar treatment. He was interviewed a couple of weeks ago by Kevin Parrott. And when he came on and told Kevin I'd thrown my case, Kevin said, well, no, that's not right. I was actually there for the trial by damages. And he was correcting Victor directly to his face as a witness of what I have been enduring in the courts of Wisconsin. So now Victor has added Kevin to his hit list. By the way, if you want to see this brilliant piece Kevin wrote, it's called The Legal Lynching of a Truth Seeker, Jim Fetzer's Stalinist-style show trial. It's on unz.com. Nothing ever written about my case has had greater, captured more exactly what's going on here. Meanwhile, we have, going back to JFK, there's further discussion about John Connally talking about, so obviously it's ancient footage, talking about the first shot coming from the right rear, the second shot hit him in the back, then the third shot hit JFK in the head. Well, that's more or less correct in terms of the official account by the FBI and the Secret Service, which in the evening, they reported that there had been only three shots fired from above and behind. The first had hit Jack in the back, the second Connally in the back, the third Jack in the back of the head. Those are three legitimate hits. They actually were hits, but they were all fired by three different shooters, none of them named Lee Oswald. And we now know he had, in addition, three hits from the front. He had a shot to the throat, he had a shot to the right temple, and he had a shot to the side of the head, all by three more other shooters. So we got six already. Then there was a seventh shooter on the grassy knoll who had a pistol and had a pulley shotgun that would have hit Jackie, and they were under strict instruction, Jackie must not be harmed. And it went into the grass opposite the grassy knoll where it was picked up by a police lieutenant and never seen again. That's seven different shooters. Just to show how absurd is the Warren report. When Malcolm Kilduff, the acting press secretary, came out to announce the president was dead, he said it was a simple matter of a bullet right through the head and pointed to his right temple. Where did that shot go? In fact, the whole afternoon, the shot to the throat, the shot to the right temple were being discussed NBC, ABC, CBS. You can go back and recount their footage in detail. So when the story started to trickle in that the Secret Service FBI could include three shots from above and behind, Frank McGee, who is nobody's fool, says, this is incongruous. How could a man have been shot from in front, the shot to the throat, the shot to the right temple they've been discussing all day, from behind? Just remember, it's so simple. Malcolm, the acting press secretary, comes out and says the president's dead, simple matter of a shot right through the head to the right temple, and yet you have the Warren report a year later saying all his shots went from above and behind. You think the government lies to you? You think the government always tells you the truth? This was such a whopper. And I encourage everyone, check it out. I got on my blog where I go through the proof that this is such a fraud. We'll be right back.
Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, I say it's all right.
Two final stories. Doug Horne is a remarkable guy. He was a senior analyst for military records for the Assassination Records Review Board, which was created to document and declassify all the records related to the assassination that the Warren Report had locked up for 75 years. And the reason they'd locked it up for 75 years is that was the average lifespan of an American at the time. So he wanted, when the Warren Report supporting documents were released, every American who was alive at the time, they wanted them to be dead. And of course, that's because they contradict the official finding. What we're learning now from the records that are being released are that Jack was being advised the CIA required to be totally reformed or even abolished. Arthur Schlesinger was even writing him about that. And we know that Mexico City was a total fabrication. Lee never went to Mexico. His passport, it turns out, wasn't even valid for travel to Cuba. So how could he go down to the Cuban embassy in Mexico with a passport that was not valid for travel to Cuba to get a visa to travel to Cuba? He couldn't. The whole thing was fabricated. They had imposters for Lee down there, both audio and visually. Edgar even put out a memorandum to FBI stations telling them that someone in Mexico City was impersonating Lee Oswald. And I say, again, if that's all you knew about the case, you know the whole thing was a setup. Larry Rivera, who's done the cutting-edge work on this, has discovered that among the CIA assets in Mexico were 3 of its presidents. Get that. Meanwhile, crypto scams surge in Israel as AI tech fuels sophisticated fraud. Believe me, we're going to be hit too. As AI technologies advance, cryptocurrency scams are becoming increasingly sophisticated and dangerous. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis now hold digital wallets. Many are losing millions to fraud, while regulators remain slow to act. It can always take a while to get organized, figure out what to do about it, just as it's taken me a while to get organized and figure out what to do about the cyber harassment and the digital bulleting by this Victor Hugo guy. But I may have figured out a way to deal with it. Meanwhile, Roger Federer is considered one of the wealthiest tennis players in history. In addition to his $130 million career prize winnings, he has an endorsement with brands like Umbolo, Rolex, Mercedes, Credit Suisse. His estimated worth is around $600 million, but none of that stopped a woman, identified only as Israelia pseudonym, from walking into a branch of Bitcoin Change, a crypto ATM network in Israel, and asking to deposit a large sum of Bitcoin into what she believed was Federer's personal wallet.